My name is David Hazen. Welcome to my podcast, Love Always Wins. Today we're going to talk about climate emotion. Now, most people know what is meant by climate emotion without any explanation. This summer, the bad news is hitting us daily with disasters, which prompt denial, avoidance, or upset. The New Yorker published online an article, What to Do with Climate Emotions, which requires a paid subscription to read it. The article is about the new and expanding profession of climate psychology that aims to deal with the distress related to climate change. This New York Times article is woefully inadequate. It's a wringing of hands about this sixth mass extinction event. We're in it. And it's typical of mainstream media's best efforts to be helpful. It's nice that it includes a mention of the Serenity Prayer. Not nice that the depth of that prayer was not explored, nor was spirituality in any shape or form. The GIF that illustrates the article is the most relevant communication of the entire piece and echoes exactly the cover of my book, Love Always Wins. Now, I was reflecting this morning about humanity's history of world wars. The invention of nuclear weapons in 1945 that stifled continuation of armed conflict temporarily is the fastest route to extinction that we don't talk about it. And yes, as the article pointed out, if you think about these things for more than 90 seconds, you may start screaming. I've been there. I've done that. The psycho-emotional spiritual distress of the nuclear Cold War of mutually assured destruction was our initiation as a species into the kind of mass healing that is still in progress and accelerating. Yes, I said healing. Systems theorist Ervin Laszlo said that living systems are self-correcting toward stability when they get out of equilibrium. In his book, The Grand Synthesis, published by Shambhala in 1987, he asserted that the human species behaves as one united system and is entering an extremely destabilizing era in its history, the outcome of which is not certain. Just like we're going to the hospital in an emergency. And just as a human body will signal an existential crisis by ramping up all its immune responses into a fever, and in extreme circumstances, a coma, the craziness of humanity is taking us all to a crisis point at which we decide to humbly accept the laws of nature or die with our self-will. Following that crisis, there will be stability. Remember nuclear winter? That is the stability of self-will triumphant. We're currently full-on engaged in an internal war within our souls, a moral war about our personal and collective behavior that is worse than any of the previous world wars because the enemy is within, the very last place we would look for it. The war is externalizing as not only human-caused planetary weather, but also mass shootings, extreme poverty, and political chaos. Pope Francis said many years ago that the solution to any and all of these problems is spiritual. He's right. Spiritual activism, and here I mention Andrew Harvey is the primary exponent of spiritual activism. He calls it sacred activism. And sometimes it's called subtle activism in order to soften that taboo subject of spirituality. And conventional activism, such as marches, sabotage, riots, have failed to impact our multiple cascading crises. There is another way. There has to be another way. Bob Doppelt, who is local to my city, Eugene, Oregon, wrote something a little more practical in 2018. His article online is called Using the Climate Crisis as a Catalyst to Increase Well-Being. And what he terms transformational resilience is nothing less than the spiritual awakening mentioned in step 12 of AA and Al-Anon. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. The work of those recovery programs, AA and Al-Anon, involves unpacking trauma, having difficult conversations, taking radical responsibility for one's actions, implementing healthy routines, and setting boundaries. That is spiritual activism. It takes persistence, patience, and a passionate endurance for resolving pain into peace. Doppelt's point, well taken, is that by changing our frame of reference to a big picture scenario, we ditch our self-centered angst and gain the hope and optimism that has the power to fuel our collective and permanent shift into a culture of empathy, collaboration, and security. Those three words were adopted as the motto for the now defunct Emerald Compassionate Action Network, which evolved out of my connection to International Cities of Peace. That organization has the motto of safety, prosperity, and quality of life. I'm convinced we cannot escape the necessity for doing spiritual work, that however we approach it, we're inextricably doing it willy-nilly anyway, with our conscious participation or without it. It definitely feels better to externalize it in prayer, meditation, art, poetry, group singing, dancing, and speaking from the heart. It feels rotten and consumes a great deal of energy to unconsciously affirm cynicism, thinking that we are engaged against our will as individuals, or to deny that we are spiritual beings on a spiritual journey. I recommend two resources for you. How I Became a Localist is a TED Talk by Deborah Fries that helps describe the roles we can play in big systemic changes that appear to be nothing but collapse, but in reality contain the seeds of a dramatically different culture. Deborah also wrote an inspiring article with Margaret Wheatley on a coherent theory of how living systems organize, adapt, and change, called Life Cycle of Emergence. What is most important to see is that there is an emotional bottom in any authentic process of learning a new paradigm, and that there will be no changes unless we fully experience that dark night of the soul, that grief, that complete disillusionment, removal of our illusions. It is ironic to me that the New York Times article said zilch about the completion of the grief journey, the upside that follows the letting go, the incredible joy. I hope I've helped you to think about what lies ahead and what there is not to fear and where to invest your energy and time. To live the field is to live with a sense of optimism. We are not isolated beings living desperate lives on a lonely planet in an indifferent universe. What we do and say is critical in creating our world. You are and always were part of a larger whole. You have far more power than you realize to heal yourselves, your loved ones, your communities, the planet. Thank you, Lynn McTaggart. Thanks for watching.